Welcome to KCA Production, your home for premium African storytelling and premium content as well. Before we continue, please like, share, subscribe to KCA Production for more amazing content. Today we tell the story called Hearts of Man. The golden rays of the setting sun passed the peaceful village of Umooma. Children laughed as they chased one another along dusty footpaths, while women returned from the stream with clay pots balanced on their heads. The rhythmic sound of pistols pounding yam echoed from different compounds, blending with the cheerful songs of birds preparing for the night. At the center of the village stood the largest compound, a magnificent ancestral home surrounded by tall palm trees. It belonged to Chief Adewale, the most respected elder in Mooma. For decades, Chief Adewale had been known as a man of wisdom, honesty, and generosity. He settled disputes without taking tithes, helped widows without seeking praise, and quietly paid school fees for children whose parents could not afford an education. Yet, despite his wealth and influence, old age had finally caught up with him. Inside his bedroom, the once strong chief lay weakly on a carved wooden bed. His breathing was slow and labored. Around him stood his three biological children. Richard Adewale, the eldest son, dressed in an expensive suit, stared impatiently at the family lawyer instead of his father. His younger sister Vanessa scrolled through her phone with little interest, occasionally pretending to wipe away tears whenever visitors entered the room. The younger son, Michael, paced restlessly, whispering to himself, "When will this all be over?" Near the doorway stood another young man, quiet, simple, respectfully dressed. His name was Samuel. Unlike the others, Samuel wasn't related to Chief Adewale by blood. 15 years earlier, the chief had found him wandering alone after a tragic road accident claimed the life of his parent. Since then, he had raised Samuel like his own son. Samuel never called him father in public. He always said chief. But in his heart, Chief Adewale was the only father he had ever known. Samuel gently adjusted the blanket covering the old man. "Are you comfortable, Chief?" he asked softly. Chief Adewale opened his tired eyes and smiled faintly. "You're always taking good care of me. You've always done that." Samuel bowed his head. "You took care of me first." The old chief reached out with trembling hands and held Samuel's. "Never allow bitterness to change your heart." Samuel frowned slightly. "I don't understand." "You will." Before Samuel could ask another question, Richard interrupted impatiently. "Father, the lawyer is here." Chief Adewale slowly turned his head. His longtime lawyer, Barrister Ibrahim, stepped forward respectfully. "Chief," the old man nodded. "Is everything ready?" "Yes. The documents are exactly as you instructed." Richard exchanged a quick glance with Vanessa. Michael smiled confidently. Each of them secretly imagined the properties, bank accounts, and businesses they expected to inherit. Chief Adewale closed his eyes for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. "My children," the room became silent. "I have spent my entire life gathering wealth, but I have learned that money cannot keep a family together." Richard shifted uncomfortably. Vanessa forced a smile. Michael looked towards the lawyer again. The chief continued, "If your hearts become ruled by greed, everything I built will be destroyed." Richard sighed quietly. "Father, please don't tire yourself." Chief Adewale looked directly at him. "No, this is the most important conversation of my life." He slowly turned towards Samuel. "And Samuel?" Samuel stepped closer. "Yes, Chief." The old man's eyes filled with emotion. "Promise me that no matter what happens after I'm gone, you will never hate them." Samuel looked confused. "They are my family too." Chief Adewale smiled weakly. "This is why I trust you." A single tear rolled down Samuel's cheek. "I promise." The chief gently squeezed his hand. Then his breathing became slower, softer. The room fell completely silent. Moments later, Barrister Ibrahim quietly checked the old man's pulse. He lowered his head. "I'm sorry. The chief is gone." Samuel dropped to his knees, overwhelmed with grief. "No, Chief, you can't leave me." Tears streamed down his face. He held the old man's hand tightly, refusing to let go. Meanwhile, Richard slowly walked towards the window. Vanessa looked at Michael. Neither of them cried. Instead, Richard spoke in a low voice. We should contact the lawyer tomorrow. Michael nodded. The estate must be settled quickly. Someone overheard every word. His heart sank. The man who had raised them had just taken his final breath. Yet all they could think of was his wealth. As villagers gathered outside the compound mourning the loss of their beloved chief, a cool evening breeze swept through the open window. It carried with it an uneasy silence. Barrister Ibrahim quietly gathered the document from his briefcase. Before leaving the room, he looked back at the lifeless body of Chief Adewale, then whispered to himself, "They have no idea what the chief has left behind." The thunder in the clouds rumbled faintly in the distance. The funeral had not yet begun, but the battle for Chief Adewale's legacy already had. 3 days later, in Chief Adewale's compound, sound of traditional drums echoed across Umoema village as people gathered to bid farewell to Chief Adewale. Men dressed in black wrappers stood quietly beneath large canopies, while women sang sorrowful songs that celebrated the life of a man many believed had been the father of the entire community. Stories about his kindness filled every conversation. He paid for my daughter's education. He helped me rebuild my shop after the fire. He settled the land dispute and nearly destroyed our family. He never turned away anyone who came to him. As villagers shared memories of the late chief, Sarah moved quietly among the guests, making sure everyone had food and water. He barely ate. His eyes were swollen from days of crying. Mrs. Eno, an elderly widow whose rent had been secretly paid by Chief Adewale for years, approached him. "My son." Samuel looked up. "Yes, Mama Eno." She gently touched his shoulder. "Your father would be proud of you." Samuel smiled sadly. "I only wish he were here to say that himself." The old woman sighed. "Good people never truly leave us. They remain in the hearts they touched." Someone lowered his head respectfully. Not far away, Richard stood with Vanessa and Michael beneath another canopy. Their conversation had nothing to do with the funeral. "The lawyer called," Richard said quietly. "The reading of the will is this afternoon." Michael smiled. "Finally." Vanessa adjusted her sunglasses. "I wonder who gets the Lagos properties." Richard replied confidently. "As the other son, I will naturally manage the businesses." Michael laughed. "And I'll take the hotels." Vanessa folded her arms. "I've already decided which mansion I want." None of them noticed that Barrister Ibrahim had overheard every word. He looked disappointed. "So soon," he whispered. "Their father's body has barely been laid to rest." Later that afternoon, the family gathered inside Chief Adewale's large sitting room. Heavy silence filled the air. Barrister Ibrahim sat at the head of the table with a sealed brown envelope. Several respected village elders were also present as witnesses. Samuel quietly took the last seat at the far end of the room. Richard glanced at him. "I'm surprised you are here." Samuel looked confused. "The chief raised me." Richard forced a smile. "Yes, but this is a family meeting." Before Samuel could respond, one of the village elders spoke firmly. The late chief specifically instructed that Samuel must be present. Richard leaned back without another word. Barrister Ibrahim slowly broke the seal on the envelope. This document contains the final wishes of Chief Adewale. He adjusted his glasses. I would read his words exactly as he wrote them. The room became completely silent. "To my beloved children, if you are hearing these words, then my journey on earth has ended." Vanessa quietly wiped away a tear. Richard stared at the papers impatiently. Michael folded his arms. Barrister Ibrahim continued reading. "Wealth is easy to gather. Character is not. If all I leave behind is money, then I have failed as a father." The lawyer paused briefly before continuing. "My businesses, houses, farmland, investments and savings shall not be shared immediately." Richard frowned. "What?" Michael sat upright. "What does that mean?" Barrister Ibrahim raised a hand. "Please allow me to finish. For 12 months, everything I own shall remain under the supervision of my lawyer." Gasps filled the room. Vanessa shook her head. "This must be a mistake." Barrister Ibrahim continued. "During those 12 months, my children must continue living together in this family house." Richard stood abruptly. "Impossible. I have my own mansion." The lawyer ignored the interruption. No property may be sold, no businesses may be divided, no inheritance shall be released until the end of the 12 months. Michael slammed his hand on the table. This is ridiculous. One of the others spoke sternly. Sit down. Reluctantly, Michael obeyed. Barrister Ibrahim continued. At the end of 1 year, the person who demonstrates the greatest compassion, honesty, and responsibility will inherit control over my entire estate. The room fell silent. Richard blinked repeatedly. Vanessa looked completely stunned. Michael laughed bitterly. So this is some kind of competition? The lawyer raised another page. There is more. Do not judge one another by words, judge by actions. The heart of a person is revealed when they believe no one is watching. Richard folded his arms angrily. How exactly are we supposed to prove that? Barrister Ibrahim calmly replied. The late chief prepared guidelines. He opened another folder. For the next 12 months, every business decision, every act of kindness, every responsibility towards the family and the community will be documented. The village council and I will monitor your conduct. Vanessa scoffed. We're adults, for goodness sake. We're not children sitting for examinations. Barrister Ibrahim met her guess. No, with people being tested by the wisdom of your father. Then he looked towards Samuel, and finally, there is one personal instruction. Everyone turned. Samuel, you entered my home with nothing but tears in your eyes. You grew into a man with kindness in your heart. You are not to fight anyone for my wealth. Remain humble. Continue doing what is right. The reward will come from God, whether or not it comes from men. Samuel struggled to hold back tears. I miss you, Chief, he whispered. Richard rolled his eyes. Touching. But he's still not family. Before anyone could respond, Barrister Ibrahim slowly folded the will. The late chief's wishes are legally binding. Richard's face darkened. So we wait a year. Just to be judged? Yes. Malcolm stormed towards the door. This is madness. Vanessa followed without another word. As the three siblings left the room, Richard whispered, We'll find a way around this. They didn't realize that someone had heard every word. Nor did they notice Barrister Ibrahim quietly watching them. The lawyer glanced at a small, locked wooden box resting beside his chair. Inside it was another sealed envelope. One chief Adewale had ordered him not to open unless absolutely necessary. Looking at the departing siblings, Barrister Ibrahim sighed. I pray it never comes to that. Outside, dark clouds gathered once again over the Adewale compound. The test had begun, and before it ended, the true hearts of every person in that house would be revealed. 2 weeks later, the once peaceful Adewale compound no longer felt like home. The laughter that had once echoed through its wide courtyard had been replaced by silence, suspicion, and whispered conversations. The workers moved carefully around the house, afraid of saying the wrong thing. Chief Adewale's portrait hung proudly in the sitting room, his gentle smile overlooking a family that was slowly falling apart. Every morning, Barrister Ibrahim visited to ensure the late chief's instructions were being followed. Every evening, he quietly wrote observations in a leather journal. The test had begun, and everyone knew it. One morning, Samuel woke before sunrise, as he always did. He swept the compound, watered the flowers Chief Adewale had planted years earlier, and helped the elderly cook prepare breakfast for everyone in the house. When the meal was ready, he knocked on Richard's bedroom door. Breakfast is served. Richard opened the door halfway. You don't have to pretend. Samuel frowned. Pretend? Richard stepped closer. You're trying to impress the lawyer. Samuel shook his head. I'm simply doing what Chief taught me. Richard smirked. Keep acting. We all know why. He slammed the door shut. Samuel stood quietly for a moment before walking away without saying another word. Later that day, Vanessa entered the village market, wearing expensive sunglasses and designer clothes. Several women greeted her politely. She barely acknowledged them. As she passed an elderly fruit seller, her handbag accidentally knocked over a basket of oranges. The fruit fell across the dusty road. The old woman hurried after them. My oranges! Vanessa looked back briefly. I don't have time for this. She continued walking. Across the market, Samuel had witnessed everything. Without hesitation, he ran over. It's all right, Mama. Together they gathered every orange from the ground. Samuel even paid for the fruit that had been damaged. The old woman smiled gracefully. God bless you, my son. Samuel simply replied, My father always said kindness costs less than regret. Unknown to him, Barrister Ibrahim had been standing outside the nearby shop. He quietly wrote another note in his journal. That evening, Richard gathered Vanessa and Michael inside his bedroom. He locked the door before speaking. "We're handling this the wrong way." Michael folded his arms. "What do you mean?" Richard lowered his voice. "The lawyer is watching us." So? "So we give him exactly what he wants to see." Vanessa smiled. "You mean we pretend?" Richard nodded. "We donate to charity. We smile at villages. We visit the sick. We act like saints for at least 12 months. Michael laughed loudly. "And after we inherit everything, we can go back to normal, of course." The three siblings burst into laughter. Outside the bedroom, someone happened to be passing by with clean laundry. He heard the laughter. He paused, then quietly continued walking. He had learned long ago that listening behind doors often led to unnecessary trouble. The next morning, Richard announced that the family would donate food to the community clinic. News spread quickly through Umoma. Villagers praised the gesture. Cameras from local news station even arrived to record the event. Richard stood proudly before the cameras. "Our father dedicated his life to helping others. We intend to continue his legacy." The reporter smiled. "What a wonderful example." Boxes of rice, beans, and medicine were handed to the clinic staff. Photographs were taken. Applause filled the compound. But as soon as the cameras packed up and left, Richard turned to one of the workers. "Take back half the supplies." The worker looked confused. "Sir? No one will notice. They've already taken the pictures." The worker hesitated. I don't think Chief would have approved." Richard's face hardened. "I wasn't asking for your opinion." From the corridor, someone overheard the conversation. His heart sank. Without saying a word, he quietly used his own savings to replace the missing supplies before anyone at the clinic realized they were gone. Later that afternoon, the clinic's matron approached Barrister Ibrahim. "I don't know who did it," she said, "but someone secretly brought back everything that disappeared." The lawyer smiled to himself. "I believe I know who did that." Another note was added to the journal. Days turned into weeks. The contrast between siblings and Samuel became more noticeable. Whenever visitors came, Richard and his siblings became polite and generous. The moment everyone left, he argued with workers, insulted villagers, and complained about every inconvenience. Samuel, however, remained the same whether anyone was watching or not. He repaired broken chairs around the compound. He visited Mama Eno every weekend with groceries. He restored children at the village primary school. He helped repair the leaking roof of the community clinic without telling anyone. One evening, a young boy asked him, "Why do you help people all the time?" Samuel smiled. "Because someone once helped me when I was in need, when I had nothing." The little boy nodded thoughtfully. "I want to be like you someday." Samuel laughed softly. "Be better than me." That night, Barrister Ibrahim sat alone in his office reviewing his notes. Each page told the same story. One family was pretending. One young man was simply living the value Chief Adewale had taught him. The lawyer closed his journal and looked towards the locked wooden box that still rested on his shelf. He gently placed a hand on it. "Chief, I think your children are forgetting the lesson. But perhaps they still have time to change." As he extinguished the lamp and prepared to leave, a shadow appeared outside his office window. Someone had been watching him. The figure waited until the lawyer left, then slowly approached the window. A gloved hand reached towards the latch. Whoever stood outside wasn't interested in the journal. They wanted the locked wooden box. The first rays of morning sunlight stretched across the Morma village as Barrister Ibrahim unlocked the door to his office. He immediately noticed and sensed that something was wrong. One of the windows was slightly open. The curtains swayed gently in the breeze. He frowned. "I closed that window yesterday." Walking cautiously inside, he examined the room. Books had been moved, drawers had been opened, papers were scattered across the floor. Whoever had entered had searched every corner, yet nothing appeared to be missing. His eyes quickly turned towards the wooden cabinet in the corner. He unlocked it with trembling hands. The small wooden box was still there. He let out a deep sigh of relief. Thank God. Carefully lifting the box, he inspected the lock. There were fresh scratch marks around the keyhole. Someone had definitely tried to open it. Barrister Ibrahim held the box tightly. "So, they started looking." Later that day, Richard gathered Vanessa and Michael in the family library. I've confirmed it, Richard said. The lawyer is hiding something. Vanessa leaned forward. The wooden box? Richard nodded. If father left another document, it could change everything. Michael frowned. You think it's another will? I don't know, but whatever is inside that box, it matters more than you know. Vanessa crossed her arms. Then you need to get it, and get it fast. Meanwhile, Samuel spent the afternoon repairing the roof of the village church. The elderly pastor climbed the ladder carrying a bottle of water. You've been working since sunrise, Samuel smiled. The roof was leaking. It couldn't wait. The pastor handed him the water. You remind me of your father so much. Someone looked down. I think about him every day. The pastor smiled gently. Chief Adewale loved you very much. Someone nodded. I know. The pastor hesitated before speaking again. Do you know why he brought you into his home? Someone looked surprised. I was told my parents died in an accident. That's true, but there is more. Someone climbed down from the roof. What do you mean? The pastor sighed. Years ago, Chief Adewale made a promise. That evening, the pastor and Samuel walked quietly through the village cemetery. They stopped before two simple graves. Fresh flowers rested beside them. These are your parents. Samuel knelt slowly. He had visited the graves before, and never with someone who knew the full story. The pastor spoke softly. Your father wasn't just Chief Adewale's friend. He once saved the chief's life. Someone looked up in surprise. What? The pastor nodded. Bandits attacked them while they were returning from a business trip. Your father protected the chief. He was badly injured. Chief Adewale never forgot that sacrifice. Someone listened silently. When your parents died years later, the chief felt responsible for making sure their son would never suffer. So he adopted me, Samuel said. Yes, but he never wanted you to feel indebted. He wanted you to grow because you were loved, not because you owed him anything. Tears filled Samuel's eyes. I never knew. I never really knew. The pastor placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. Some promises are too sacred to speak about until the right time. At the same moment, Richard's driver secretly followed Barrister Ibrahim through the village. The lawyer eventually stopped at the home of an elderly carpenter. Richard's driver watched from a distance. To his surprise, Barrister Ibrahim handed the wooden box to the carpenter. The carpenter carefully examined the damaged lock. I'll reinforce it, he said. No one will open this without the proper key. The driver smiled. He immediately drove back to the Adewale compound. That night, Richard listened carefully as the driver explained everything he had seen. So the box left the lawyer's office. Yes, sir. And now, it's back with him. Richard walked slowly across the room. This may be our only chance. Vanessa looked nervous. What if we're caught? Richard's expression hardened. We won't be. Michael grinned. When do we move? Richard looked toward the family portrait hanging above the fireplace. Tomorrow night. Tomorrow night we move. Elsewhere, Samuel sat alone beneath a large mango tree where Chief Adewale had often shared stories with him. He held an old walking stick that had belonged to the late chief. I wish you were still here, he whispered. I don't care about the inheritance. I only want this family to become a family again. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves overhead. For a brief moment, it almost felt as though Chief Adewale were still listening. Samuel smiled through his tears, then quietly stood and walked back towards the house. From an upstairs window, Mrs. Agnes, the elderly housekeeper, who had served the family for over 30 years, watched him. She smiled sadly. You truly have your father's heart. Then her smile faded as she noticed Richard, Vanessa and Michael loading flashlights, gloves and tools into the trunk of a car. They weren't going out for a family visit. They were preparing for something far more dangerous. The battle over Chief Adewale's legacy was about to take a darker turn. The following night, Darkness settled over Uma village. The streets were usually quiet, only the chirping of crickets and the distant barking of dogs disturbed the peaceful night. Inside the Adewale compound, every light gradually went off. One by one, the servants retired to their rooms. Mrs. Agnes locked the kitchen before whispering her nightly prayer. Samuel remained awake a little longer, reading one of Chief Adewale's favorite books on integrity. Eventually, he switched off the lamp and went to bed. Across the hallway, Richard quietly opened his bedroom door. He looked left, then right. Satisfied that no one was watching, he signaled to Vanessa and Michael, "It's time." The three siblings slipped out of the compound and climbed into Richard's SUV. Without headlights, they drove toward Barrister Ibrahim's office. 15 minutes later, the vehicle stopped beneath a huge large mango tree opposite the office. Richard removed a small toolkit from the boot. Michael looked nervous. "Are you sure about this?" Richard replied firmly. "We're only looking for what belongs to us, after all." Vanessa whispered, "If anyone asks, we were never here." They crossed the road quietly. Michael forced open a back window. Within seconds, all three were inside the lawyer's office. The room was dark. Richard switched on a small flashlight. Spread out. Search everywhere. Drawers were opened. Bookshelves were emptied. Cabinets were inspected. Vanessa searched behind framed certificates. Michael checked beneath the desk. After several minutes, "I found it," Michael whispered excitedly. Inside the wooden cabinet sat the familiar locked box. Richard smiled triumphantly. "I knew it." He lifted it carefully onto the desk. Michael produced a crowbar. With one powerful strike, the lock broke. Slowly, Richard lifted the lid. The siblings leaned closer. Silence. Their expressions changed instantly. "There are no property documents," whispered Vanessa. Inside the box rested only a leather-bound diary, several old photographs, and a sealed letter. Michael looked confused. "What's this supposed to mean?" Richard picked up the diary. On the first page were handwritten words. "The personal journal of Chief Adewale." Richard quickly flipped through the pages. Most contained private reflections about family, leadership, and faith. Then one particular entry caught his attention. He began reading aloud. "Today, I watched my children argue over money while Samuel quietly repaired an old widow's roof. I realized something painful. Blood may create relatives, but only character creates family." The room fell silent. Vanessa slowly lowered her eyes. Richard turned another page. Richard is intelligent, but pride blinds him. Vanessa longs for admiration more than purpose. Michael, well, he has a good heart, yet he follows the wrong voices. Michael looked away. Richard continued reading. "Someone expects nothing from me. Perhaps that is why he deserves so much." Vanessa swallowed nervously. Richard's hand settled around the diary. "No, there must be more." He grabbed the sealed envelope. Before he could open it, a voice echoed through the office. "Don't." Everyone froze. Barrister Ibrahim stood at the doorway. Behind him were two village elders. Richard slowly lowered the envelope. "You've been following us?" The lawyer shook his head. "No. I suspected that this day would come." He looked around at the damaged office. "The question is, what were you hoping to find?" Richard remained silent. The lawyer gently took the diary from his hands. "This was never meant to satisfy your curiosity. It was meant to protect your father's legacy." One of the elders stepped forward. "Breaking into this office is a serious offense." Vanessa quickly spoke. "We weren't stealing. We were only looking for answers." Barrister Ibrahim sighed. "Answers obtained through dishonesty rarely brings peace." Michael lowered his head in shame. Richard remained silent and defiant. "Our father had no right to judge us." The lawyer met his eyes calmly. "He didn't judge you. He hoped you would change." Back at the Adewale compound, Sarah noticed the empty bedrooms. Mrs. Agnes approached him. "They've been gone for nearly an hour." Samuel's face filled with concern. Where would they go at this time of the night? Before she could answer, Barrister Ibrahim's vehicle drove into the compound. The siblings stepped out quietly behind him. Someone immediately realized something was wrong. What happened? No one answered. Barrister Ibrahim looked at everyone gathered in the courtyard. I think it's time we stop pretending. He held up the diary. This belongs to your father. And beginning tomorrow, I will read one page aloud each evening. Richard looked horrified. You can't! I can, and I will. The father wanted his words to guide his family, especially when they stopped listening to one another. Richard stormed into the house. Vanessa followed silently. Malcolm hesitated before looking at Samuel. For the first time, there was guilt in his eyes. I'm sorry, he whispered. Samuel simply nodded. You can still become the family chief, wanted us to be. Michael said nothing. Late that night, Richard sat alone in his room. His anger slowly gave way to reflection. He remembered the diary's words. Pride blinded him. He clenched his fists. Is that really who I've become? Outside his window, he saw someone helping one of the elderly servants carry a heavy basket onto the kitchen. No cameras, no lawyer, no audience, just quiet kindness. For the first time since his father's death, Richard began to wonder if the inheritance test had never been about money at all. The diary had survived, but now its words had begun to change hearts. Not all of them, not yet, but the first cracks had appeared. 3 months had passed since the reading of Chief Adewale's diary began. Every Sunday evening, the family gathered in the sitting room while Barrister Ibrahim read another page. Some entries were filled with wisdom, and some contained painful truths. Some made the family laugh as they remembered happier days. Others left the room in complete silence. Slowly, the atmosphere inside the Adewale compound began to change. Michael no longer shouted at the workers. He started helping on the family farm and often visited the village school with donated books. Mrs. Agnes noticed the difference. Your father would smile if he saw you today, she told him one afternoon. Michael smiled modestly. I'm only trying to become the man he believed I could be. Mrs. Agnes nodded with pride, but not everyone had changed. Richard still believed the inheritance belonged to him. Though he had become more careful with his words, his heart remained restless. Whenever Barrister Ibrahim praised someone's kindness, jealousy quietly returned. Vanessa remained caught between the two brothers. Sometimes she admired Samuel's humility, other times she allowed Richard's bitterness to influence her. The test was far from over. One hot afternoon, Samuel and several workers were repairing an old storage building behind the family house. Inside the building were farming tools, sacks of grain, and many of Chief Adewale's handwritten records. Samuel carefully carried boxes towards the courtyard. Be careful, he reminded the workers. Some of these documents are older than we are. Everyone laughed. Suddenly, a loud scream echoed from the compound. Fire! Everyone turned. Smoke poured from the roof of the storage building. Within seconds, bright flames burst through the windows. The dry harmattan wind pushed the fire across the roof. Workers began running in every direction. Bring water! Call fire service! Move away from the building! Panic spread quickly. Richard rushed outside. My father's records. Vanessa covered her mouth. The fire is spreading. Mrs. Agnes cried out. There are still people inside. Samuel looked towards the smoke-filled doorway. One of the younger workers had come back inside moments earlier to retrieve equipment. He had not come out. Without hesitation, Samuel grabbed a wet blanket from a nearby water drum. Richard caught his arm. Don't go in. The roof could collapse. Samuel looked at him calmly. If someone is inside, I can't leave him. Before anyone could stop him, Samuel wrapped the blanket around himself and disappeared into the burning building. The flames roared louder. Minutes felt like hours. Everyone watched helplessly. Vanessa whispered through tears, he will never make it. Mrs. Agnes closed her eyes in prayer. Richard stood frozen. Inside the building, smoke filled every corner. Samuel could barely see. He covered his nose with the white cloth and shouted, Is anyone here? A weak voice answered, Help! Following the sound, Samuel found young David trapped beneath the fallen window beam. Samuel, I can't move. It's all right, Samuel said. We're living together. Using every ounce of strength, Samuel lifted the beam just enough for David to crawl free. Together, they staggered towards the exit. Behind them, a section of the roof had collapsed. Burning timber crashed to the floor. The flames closed in. Samuel pushed David ahead. Run! The two burst through the doorway just as the roof completely gave away. The crowd erupted in cheers. Mrs. Agnes embraced David tightly. Thank God. Samuel collapsed onto the ground, coughing heavily from the smoke. Richard stared at him in disbelief. He risked his own life. without thinking about the inheritance, without thinking about recognition, simply because someone needed help. Later that evening, the fire had finally been extinguished. Much of the storage building had been destroyed. The family gathered in the courtyard. Barrister Ibrahim quietly examined damage. Several important records had been lost. Richard walked slowly towards Samuel, who sat with bandages wrapped around his arm. For a long moment, neither man spoke. Finally, Richard said, "You could have died." Samuel smiled faintly, and so could David have. Richard looked down. "I would have stayed outside." Samuel replied gently, "Fear doesn't make you a bad person. What matters is what you choose after the fear." Richard struggled to find words. For the first time, he saw Samuel not as a rival, but as a brother. That night, Barrister Ibrahim gathered everyone for the weekly diary reading. He opened to a page dated several years earlier. His voice filled the quiet room. The true heart of a person is revealed in moments when there is no time to calculate personal gain. A kind heart does not ask, "What will I receive?" It asks, "Who needs me?" No one spoke. The words seemed written for that very day. Richard slowly turned towards Samuel. Their eyes met. This time, there was no jealousy, only respect. Outside, the ashes of the burned storage building still smoldered beneath the moonlight. Many valuable possessions had been destroyed, yet something far more valuable had survived. But hidden among the ashes, an old metal chest blackened by the fire remained unopened. Mrs. Agnes noticed it from a distance. So that's where he hid it. Whatever was inside that chest had survived the flames, and it held one final secret that Chief Adewale had protected until the right time. 9 months after Chief Adewale's passing, the rainy season had passed. Fresh green leaves covered the trees around the Adewale compound, and flowers bloomed where the old storage building once stood. Life had slowly returned to normal, but the people living in the house were no longer the same. Richard had become quieter. Instead of giving orders from the veranda, he now walked alongside the farm workers every morning. Vanessa started organizing free literacy classes for young girls in the village. Michael spent most afternoons coaching children on football field and mentoring teenagers who had dropped out of school. Samuel continued living exactly as he always had. Kind, patient, humble. If anyone praised him, he smiled and simply said, "I only learned from a good man." Mrs. Agnes often watched them from the kitchen window. The chief's prayers are finally being answered, she whispered. One Saturday morning, Barrister Ibrahim arrived carrying a blackened metal chest recovered from the fire months earlier. The entire family gathered in the courtyard. Village elders also took their seats. Barrister Ibrahim placed the chest on the table. "This belonged to Chief Adewale. He instructed me to never open it unless circumstances made it necessary." Richard looked at his scorched chest. "So today is that day?" The lawyer nodded. "I believe your father's final lesson cannot wait any longer." He unlocked the heavy padlock. The rusty lid creaked open. Inside were several neatly wrapped bundles, old letters, photographs, a leather pouch, and one final sealed envelope marked, "To my children." Barrister Ibrahim carefully opened the envelope. The courtyard became completely silent. "If this letter is being read, then I believe each of you has already discovered that the greatest battles are fought within the human heart." Everyone listened attentively. "Money has never been my greatest achievement. The family we built together is." Richard lowered his eyes. Vanessa quietly wiped away a tear. Michael folded his hands. The lawyer continued. "Many people spend their lives building houses, but forget to build homes. Many gather wealth, but neglect character. Never become those people." Samuel closed his eyes as though he could hear the chief's voice speaking directly to him. Barrister Ibrahim reached into the chest again. He removed an old photograph. It showed a much younger Chief Adewale standing beside Samuel's late parent. The three adults were smiling. Another picture followed. This one showed Richard, Vanessa, Michael, and little Samuel playing together in the compound as children. Richard said for a long time, "I remember this day." Samuel smiled. "We spent hours trying to climb the mango tree." Michael laughed softly, and father scolded all of us. For the first time in many months, the family laughed together. Then Barrister Ibrahim opened the leather pouch. Inside was a simple silver key. Richard frowned. "A key?" The lawyer nodded. "Your father asked me to keep this safe." "What does it open?" Vanessa asked. "The old workshop." Everyone looked surprised. The workshop had remained locked since Chief Adewale's death. No one had entered it in years. Moments later, the family stood before the old wooden workshop behind the house. Barrister Ibrahim inserted the silver key into the lock. The door slowly opened. The room was filled with wooden furniture, farming tools, and handcrafted toys. On every wall hung photographs of villagers Chief Adewale had helped over the years, children he sponsored through school, widows whose homes he rebuilt, farmers whose businesses he rescued, families whose medical bills he quietly paid. In the center of the room stood a large wooden table. On it rested a carved plaque. Samuel stepped forward and read the inscription aloud. A wealthy man is not the one who owns the most. A wealthy man is the one whose kindness continues long after he's gone. Silence filled the room. We just slowly walked around the workshop looking at every photograph. I never knew. Vanessa touched one of the frames. He never told anyone. Miss Agnes smiled. He never helped people to be praised. He helped because that was who he was. Michael noticed another folder on the table. Barrister is something else. Inside were plans for a community foundation. Chief Adewale had written detailed instructions, scholarships, free medical outreach, small business loans for widows, agricultural training for young farmers. Everything had been carefully planned years before his death. Barrister Ibrahim smiled. This was your father's true dream. He had hoped all of you would complete it together. We just sat down slowly. For the first time he understood. His father had never been preparing them to inherit money. He had been preparing them to inherit responsibility. Tears rolled down his face. I've wasted so much time. Samuel sat beside him. The best time to change is today. Richard looked at Samuel. I treated you like an outsider. You never stop treating me like your brother, said Samuel. Because you are. Without another word, Richard stood up and embraced him. The courtyard erupted in quiet applause. Vanessa and Michael joined them. Miss Agnes wiped away tears. Barrister Ibrahim smiled with relief. The family Chief Adewale had dreamed of was finally standing together again. As evening approached, the village gathered in the town hall. Richard stood onto the stage. He looked at the crowd before speaking. My father left us wealth, but more importantly, he left us a lesson. We've decided that his businesses will continue, but a large part of the profits will now fund the Chief Adewale Foundation just as he planned. The villagers applauded. Someone looked towards the sky and whispered, We kept your promise, Chief. The foundation had not yet begun its work, but something far greater had already been built. A family with one heart. 12 months after Chief Adewale's passing, the day had finally arrived, and the entire village of Umuahama gathered at the village hall where the final decision regarding the Adewale estate would be announced. Some villagers believed someone would inherit everything. Others thought Richard's recent transformation had earned him another chance. No one knew what Barrister Abraham would say. Inside the hall, the four members of the Adewale family sat together in the front row. Unlike a year earlier, there was no tension between them. Nervous? Samuel laughed softly. I've never cared about the inheritance. Richard nodded. I know. And that's exactly why you deserve it. Samuel shook his head. We'll hear further decision soon enough. Mrs. Agnes seated behind him, smiled through tears. The house finally feels like a home again. Barrister Ibrahim stepped onto the stage carrying a familiar leather journal and the final legal document. The hall fell silent. My friends, he began. 1 year ago, Chief Adewale gave his family an unusual assignment. He did not ask them to compete for wealth. He asked them to discover their hearts. He looked towards Richard. A year ago, pride ruled his family. Richard lowered his head. Gloria turned to Vanessa. Recognition mattered more than responsibility. Vanessa wiped away a tear. He looked at Michael. Fear often kept you from doing what was right. Michael nodded quietly. Finally, Barrister Ibrahim looked at Samuel. You expected nothing. You simply continue living the values the chief taught you. Samuel bowed his head respectfully. The lawyer opened the final page of Chief Adewale's journal. This was written only 3 days before his passing. He began reading. If my children truly change, there will be no winners, because love does not divide the family, it unites one. The villagers exchanged puzzled looks. Barrister Ibrahim smiled. The inheritance test was never about choosing one person to receive everything. It was about giving all of you the opportunity to become worthy of what your father built. He lifted the official document. After reviewing 1 year of observations from the village council, community leaders, and my own records, I can confidently say that Chief Adewale's wish has been fulfilled. A ripple of excitement swept through the hall. Richard held his breath. The Adewale estate shall remain under a family trust. The businesses will continue to operate together. Richard will oversee business development. Vanessa will supervise the Chief Adewale Foundation. Michael will manage the agricultural projects and youth development programs. And Samuel. The hall became completely silent. Samuel shall serve as chairman of the family trust, responsible for ensuring that every decision reflects the values upon which Chief Adewale built his legacy. Samuel's eyes widened. He slowly stood. Barrister, I don't think I'm qualified. Barrister Ibrahim smiled warmly. Your father believed you were, and after watching you for an entire year, So do I. Before Samuel could respond, Richard stood beside him. I support father's decision. He turned towards the crowd. A year ago I wanted wealth. Today, I simply want to make my father proud. The villagers applauded. Vanessa stepped forward. I spent years chasing admiration, but father taught me that serving others is far more rewarding. Michael smiled. I followed stronger voices because I was afraid to think for myself. Never again. The applause grew louder. Someone looked at each of them. I can't lead this family alone. Richard placed a hand on his shoulder. You won't. We will lead it together. The four embraced as the villagers rose to their feet in a standing ovation. That afternoon, the family walked through the community square together. Construction had already begun on Chief Adewale Community Learning Center. Nearby workers were renovating the village health clinic using funds from the family trust. Children ran across the field laughing. Widows greeted the family with smiles. Young apprentices learned carpentry in workshops funded by the foundation. The dream Chief Adewale had written about years earlier was becoming reality. Mrs. Agnes watched from beneath the old mango tree. She whispered, "We planted seeds of kindness, and today we are finally harvesting them." As the sun began to set, Samuel returned alone to Chief Adewale's grave. He gently placed fresh flowers beside the headstone. "Chief, we didn't become perfect, but we became better. We finally understand what you were trying to teach us." A gentle breeze stirred the trees. Samuel smiled. "I hope we've made you proud." At the end of it all, the inheritance had been distributed. The family had been restored. It was all Chief Adewale had hoped for. The heart of man is not tested by what he owns, but by what he gives when no one expects him to give. Let your legacy be kindness, integrity, and love. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe to KCA Production for more inspiring stories and movies. See you in our next production.